Welcome back to the Strength and Speed Podcast. I'm your host, Evan Preparis. Not joining me this week is Brenna Calvert, but I do have two other guests on the line, which I'll introduce in a couple seconds. This episode is brought to you by Hammer Nutrition. If you're looking for great endurance supplements or protein or just vitamins in general, make sure you head over to hammernutrition.com and check them out. If you use code 240887, you get 15% off your first order. Also, if you haven't picked up a copy of my book, Strength and Speed's Guide to Elite Obstacle Course Racing, make sure you head over to teamstrengthspeed.com and pick up a copy of that. And then finally, give a quick shout-out to Mud Run Guide, because I just got a package today of a bunch of goodies, including Mud Run Guide stickers, Mud Run Guide hat, and then some new products I'm going to be testing and writing some reviews on, including dry wear, Hammer Strength apparel, and a new pair of Saucony trail racing shoes. I think Margaret Schlachter is actually writing the review on that, but I'm going to throw my 2 cents in. Anyway, now that that's out of the way, let's get to our actual podcast. Today we have Jay and Heather Bodes joining us from the Overcome and Run podcast.
Hey, what's going on, man? I thank you. Oh, geez, sorry, I got a little close to the mic there, but definitely thank you guys, or thank you, not you guys. It was Brenna who reached out, but you know, I don't know, mister, but we thank you for having us on, man. It's exciting to be here. This whole last week, or I think was it the week before, I was getting all my my memory reminders on Facebook from last year when you and I were on my show every single day when you were doing your Across America, and that was just a cool thing to see, man. So it's been a long time. We've been working together. I'm excited to be on your show now.
Yeah, it's great, and definitely need to thank you again for doing that. I know how, you know, producing a podcast and putting out daily episodes like you did for OCR America kind of had to be difficult to get. Even though they were just like kind of quick 10, 15-minute things, you know, it still requires you to sit down and add the intro and the outro and edit it a little bit. So definitely appreciate that and the support you gave me for that event.
Well, definitely, man, and it was actually really good timing for me because I don't know if I mentioned this at the time, but I was living on an air mattress with a camping chair because they hadn't moved, you know, I moved across country then, and they hadn't moved my stuff yet, and so I didn't have anything, so I had nothing else to do with my day. So talking to you was all I did, and then Heather was out of town, so it was a lonely time.
So this is cool also because this is actually the first time I think I've talked to Heather. So, Heather, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. I felt very excited to be included in this interview, so it's going great. Loving the podcast. Great.
Glad to hear that. So talking about podcasting, let's kind of talk a little bit about your podcast. So if you're listening to this and you're not subscribed to Overcome and Run, make sure you do that. It's definitely a great podcast, and actually kind of the reason my podcast exists is because of Overcome and Run. Yeah.
Well, thanks, man. That is that's an honor to hear that. I don't know that we ever set out to like inspire anybody to start a podcast. I just set out to talk on a microphone and see if anybody would listen, and here we go.
Yeah. So like after being on your show a couple of times, you know, I really enjoyed the experience, and I was like, oh well, I want to cover some other topics, you know, and you can only cover so much in an interview. So I was like, well. You know, I started talking to Brenna, and we kind of spitballing the idea for a couple of months, and then towards the end of last year, we're like, all right, let's do it. And I actually sat down and watched YouTube videos for about 8 hours one day, trying to figure out what the hell I was doing before starting one.
Oh, I was just saying, I think I did the same thing. I must have watched 1,000 videos and thought through this like 100 times.
So kind of let's take it back to the beginning. Like, why did you decide to start a podcast in OCR?
OCR. Well, this is actually really funny. Why I chose OCR. So, I mean, naturally, I loved it. You know, Heather and I went out and did we had only done 2 or 3 races, maybe tops, when I started the podcast. But the funny thing about it was when I first reached out and kind of like put feelers out for like what podcasts existed in OCR, I didn't find any. And apparently my Google searching was like way off because at the time, I mean, there was already Obstacle Racing Media, there was Obstacle Order and Obstacle Dominator, and then a couple of other, Spartan Up and some other stuff that wasn't like 100% obstacle course racing, but there was at least those three. And I don't know how through like 25 or 30 different Google searches and iTunes searches and so on and so forth, I never found them. But I was like, man, am I the first person to like think of doing an OCR podcast? And so I thought like, well, this has got to be super cool. Like, I mean, I'm not super good at this, but like I could try. And, so I gave it a shot. And through the years that I've been doing it now, obviously we've ran a ton of races and got a lot more experience. And I think it was cool to have the podcast help us grow in the sport, because we were going to do it anyway, grow in the sport, that is. But it was cool to be able to kind of share that journey with people and see them or have them follow us through from like, rookie level all the way up to where we're at now.
Yeah, that's actually really funny because like ORM and Matt Davis's podcast was probably on like episode 150 or 200 or something when you started.
Yeah, and I say it all the time. Matt was like the coolest dude ever when I first started. He was like, "Hey, yeah, if you need any help or let me know, and I'll be glad to help you out." And I was like, "Oh no, there's another podcast."
Well, and funny story. If you listen to the first few episodes, our intro sounds almost exactly the same. Like the intro voice is the same because Jay didn't listen to the intro of ORM.
Well, I didn't know ORM existed, so I just was like, I don't know. I was listening to another podcast on business, and it had this British lady, and I was like, I love that. So I went and I found a British lady to do my intro, and then once I met Matt, he was like, "Hey, bro, by the way."
No, that was me. I listened to one of the episodes. I come to Jay. I'm like, "Jay, we need to change our intro now." Yeah, it was great.
That's hysterical. So how did
do your research?
Yeah, no kidding. So Heather, how did you? For those of you that don't listen to Overcome a Run, how did you get roped into this? Like I know the first couple episodes are just Jay, and then you jump on at some point.
Yeah. So I'd always kind of been behind the scenes, kind of keeping an eye on it. This ultimately is Jay's brainchild. But then as we were approaching, we started it in Florida when Jay was basically not deploying at the time. And so he was able to do it weekly. And then as we were approaching our move to San Diego, where Jay would be deploying and going underway, we wanted to make sure the podcast was going to keep going. So he had approached someone else to be a co-host, but it just didn't work out. So he turned to me. He's like, "Do you want to be a co-host?" And I was like, "Sure," because I really wanted the podcast to keep going. So a couple months before the move, we just decided to start kind of bringing me on to kind of get the lay of the land and see how it works. And I'm really glad I did because now I'd say I'm pretty much almost on the same level of Jay as far as running it and producing it and keeping up content for the website and stuff like that. I'm absolutely loving it. And then I'm actually going to be taking it over primarily while he's gone on deployment.
Yeah, I think you're doing a great job. I remember with the first couple episodes when you came on, it was just you were just kind of in the background and you throw in like a sentence like every 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, I was real nervous at first.
But now, you're running episodes completely on your own, so I think that works out well that you two are on the same level there and are doing great things together.
Yeah, it took some practice, but I think we're at a good place now.
So since you started the podcast, how has that changed your outlook on OCR?
Man, it is so different. I didn't know anybody when I started the podcast. I had Chad Trammell on my very first episode, and I was like, "Oh, this guy just won a race. That's cool, right?" And a couple of years later now, I understand the magnitude. I had Chad Trammell on my first episode. That's crazy. How did that dude say yes to me? I didn't even know how to interview. And then it's just been cool to be able to get into the sport and not even that I just run them kind of level, but I love to be able to go to all of the races and know people and see people who listen to the podcast and talk to them And I just think it's really, really fun to have made this, like, honestly, like a really big part of our life. Like, it's not like, we run Spartan races on the weekends. Like, this is what we talk about when I come home from work. This is what Heather texts me about.
It dominates, like, the majority of our conversations, yeah.
And maybe it's a little unhealthy. I don't know. But, I think that's going back to, you and I, when we first started talking, that was what you told me. You were like, man, when I get into something, like, I get into it. And that's happened with OCR for you. And that's definitely what's happening for us, and it all started because Heather tricked me. So
yeah, I was the one who got us to start. But I mean, for me, it's just we know the sport on a whole different level that we never would have known were it not for the podcast and interviewing people. Like Jay said, it dominates most of the conversations that we have just in our daily lives. And just talking about the athletes and the competition and the changes, like just being aware of all these things and being so involved. It's like getting really involved in any sport that you're passionate about, just on a deeper level. And I love that.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's obviously a big fan of the sport, and I'm the same way. Like, I'm constantly checking Facebook for updates and constantly updating Mud Run Guide and ORM to kind of see what's going on in the latest news. So 100% know how you feel. So let's say someone's listening to this and they're like, oh, I want to start a podcast, maybe not necessarily on OCR, but just a podcast in general. Do you have any kind of starter tips or advice or kind of, maybe things you didn't know about before you started the podcast that now you know about and would give like maybe a warning or just like a heads up to someone who's looking to start one?
Well, I don't want to say any warnings because I think podcasting is actually like the coolest medium in the world because, like I always wanted to go into like broadcast radio, but you have to go to college for that. And I'm not really a college person. Not to say I'm not smart because I'm not, but Heather gets mad when I say that. But yeah, so I'm not, I don't want to scare anybody away from it because I think it's an awesome medium. There are some things, that I would say to warn people about because it's almost overwhelming the amount of work that goes into it that nobody knows or sees, especially at the beginning. I remember my first couple episodes might be 30 or 40-minute episodes, and I'd spend 2.5 or 3 hours editing them just because I was hypercritical at the time, and then I didn't really know what I was doing and all the hotkeys. So I think that it's going to be a big time investment on anything that you do. But the biggest things that led to my success in podcasting, I'll say hands down, was I joined kind of like I don't know what you call it, like a accountability group. I think we called ourselves. I called them my accountability buddies. But we talked every Monday, and we would talk about their podcast. We'd talk about my podcast. We'd come up with ideas, how to make it better, that we would all listen to each other's and critique it and kind of give back feedback. And if you can find that. I will say hands down that is probably the most invaluable thing that you will come across in your podcast. Yeah,
I think that I definitely know what you mean with like hypercritical. So like say I was the same way when I first started writing. I'd be like I'd proofread everything like a dozen times, and I'd be like, oh, let me change this word, let me change this word. All right, let me reread it again. And now like I just produce content, and a lot of times like my articles have like there's typically like 1 or 2 spelling errors in my articles, and I'm like, 90% solution. I'll roll with that and call it a day. So
yeah, you're not posting in a science journal. It's we're
right.
We're all just normal people reading this stuff.
Occasionally I still get comments on Facebook like, oh, you should proofread it. It's like I got it, man. Like you want a lot of content or you want like one perfect article. So what's on the future for Overcome and Run? Like what have you added in the last couple of months? So where are you taking it? And do we expect more podcasting, or what's the deal there?
Man, we don't know. That's a funny answer to give. But we have considered so many things, and we've tried to start so many things, and we're thinking about so many things. It's what I do know is I think we want to keep growing and trying to find other ways to reach people. As people may have seen, we've kind of ramped up the blogging a little bit. I feel like maybe over the past month or two, as I've gotten closer to deployment, maybe we've fallen off a little bit, just because, life sometimes has to take priority. But I think as I leave and Heather kind of takes over. She's going to be doing a lot more stuff. She's definitely the social media person, and she also can write. So I can't write very well, which is why I have like 7 half-started blog posts for really cool things that I had to say. But I think that's a thing you should expect to see from us is probably a lot more blogging. And then, we've talked about a video series. I don't know if we're going to go that route yet or not. That's going to be kind of a time investment to pay off. We're going to have to kind of evaluate because that's another huge time investment. So
it's still on the table. It would be like a lifestyle fitness kind of series because I'm going to be restarting obstacle course training, and I'm going to be doing their 20-week program. And so the idea is that it would follow me along as I train through this program. So it's still sort of on the table. We haven't decided yet.
Cool. Sounds like some good stuff coming. I will say as a writer who produces a lot of articles, I do the same thing. I literally probably have like 30 articles sitting on my desktop that are like in various states of finish. And then kind of as, I haven't published one in a while, I'll just pick one and be like, all right, this is still a relevant topic, and then fine-tune it and push it out. So I think that's pretty normal. I think you're still there. So we're talking about the future of Overcome and Run. So sounds like you got some good stuff planned. I know we've mentioned a couple times already on the podcast. Jay's in the Navy and he's got a deployment pending. So let's talk deployment, right? Because I'm assuming, when you come back from the deployment, you still want to be in decent shape for racing. So and you're going to be on a ship the whole time. So are you going to be doing some like strength-focused training or maybe cardio or I don't know, not training at all for a couple months while you're on the ship? Like, what's your plan there?
Man, training on the ship is actually key. It's you're confined to this box all day, and the only thing I have to escape to is the gym. But it's interesting that you bring up strength training because I've mentioned it 1,000 times on my show. I like hate it more than anything, but I think I need it. I think I don't do enough of it. And so when I run a lot of races, when I get to something like a sandbag carry or a bucket carry, I just get crushed. And Heather, it's funny, when Heather and I race, in similar heats or something like that, she'll make up a ton of time on me, in events like that because she is just so much stronger in comparison to her weight than I am into our weights, right? So she can crush the women's weights like I can't do the men's weights as well as she does that. So I think the big thing I'm going to focus on this 7 months I'm gone is going to be strength training in the gym. And then fortunately we have treadmills, so I can get a little time where I'm going to be, happy and running. So
all your running is going to be on the treadmill, right? Like the ship's not really large enough to do laps per se, correct?
Well, that's actually not entirely true. I'm on a ship that's nearly the size of an aircraft carrier, so I don't know what the perimeter of it is as far as distance, but it takes some time to cover. So given the opportunity, I probably will. But as somebody who's probably been over in that direction, you might know when it's 120 degrees out, it is absolutely miserable. And then you put yourself on top of a dark gray flight deck. It gets to be about 130 surface temp, and there's no running on that.
Yeah, I will say for all my deployments, I wasn't involved in obstacle course racing at the time, but I found that doing primarily strength training was the biggest benefit. So like, because the cardio, typically the view is not good, you're either on a treadmill, just logging miles, or you're running around a tiny perimeter. I was in everything from like, something the size of a football field to maybe a larger base with like just over a mile perimeter. So what I would do is like focus on strength for almost the entire trip, and then those last 2 months really try to ramp up my cardio. So when I got back to the U.S., like my cardio I could just basically fall into a normal training plan, and I'm not like struggling to take, baby steps again. So.
Right, and I think that's a big thing that I'm going to try to do. And I think the nice thing, though, is getting outside. Our ship's probably close to 300 yards long. The nice thing is just getting outside, maybe running a couple laps on that, even if it's not for very, very long. It'll be the only time I'll see the sun ever. And so, I don't ever go outside. So like I'll go sometimes 3 weeks without seeing the sun or going outside. So, that's another little escape for me is getting a little vitamin D as well.
Sounds good. Are you taking any, like specific strength training products like hand grippers or anything with you, or maybe like fat grips or something like that to train with, or you just kind of going slick?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question? The connection was kind of bad.
I was just curious if you were taking any sort of training implements with you. Like, I know on my last trip I brought some of like my actual rig grips, and I would like build a kind of like a ghetto rig in the gym. Like they had the pulley machine. I would basically loop rig grips over the center of the pulley machine and kind of traverse back and forth. And then I brought like hand grips too, like the little standard grippers that most people use for forearm strengthening.
Yeah, so I actually probably will pick up a couple of those. The nice thing is already in one of the gyms on the ship, we actually have 2 gyms, so we're pretty lucky. One of them has like one of those rock training kind of grips. So, like you'll see them at rock gyms a lot where they have like 4 or 5 different kind of grips in this one little rectangular hold, and I use those when I'm doing pull-ups. So I'm kind of trying to work multiple things at once. And then the other thing that I'm bringing just to help myself is, unfortunately for Heather, I'm bringing my my brute force bag. I don't know if you've ever worked with those, but it's your typical sandbag. It's just got a ton of grips on it, and I love it.
Nice. So Heather, what are you going to be up to while Jay's floating around the ocean?
Well, quite a bit actually. So when I'm not doing the podcast or racing, I'm a wedding engagement photographer. So my season actually picks up quite a bit. It sort of had a false start in the winter, and then it's picking back up again right about now. And so I have that keeping me busy, and then I'm going to be running the podcast as well. And then I'm also going to be doing the obstacle course training program, the ultra program, and then getting ready for World's Toughest in November. So, and then I have a bunch more races in September, and I'm going to OCR Worlds in October as well. So I have a pretty stacked fall, which is really nice.
Nice. I should be at OCR WC and World's Toughest Mudder, so I will see you there.
Oh, nice. Yeah, looking forward to it. It's going to be my first time at OCR WC and then my first time running World's Toughest. So I'm really excited. I've been waiting for it all year long. So
yeah, I know we've talked about it before on the podcast, but both of them are just such great experiences. Like you're just put into an environment where everyone is like as obsessed as you, and it's like it's like everyone has the same interest, and we all are obsessed about the same thing, and when you can say people's names in the OCR world without like their last name or without explaining who they are and stuff like that.
Yeah, I love it because I tried talking about this with my friends and family and they're all lost. So I love it. I'm so excited.
Yeah, it'll be a great time. And then World's Toughest, I mean, that's another experience on its own, right? Like I know Jay was there last year doing some media coverage, but
yeah, and I was hoping to go last year, but I actually, again, had a wedding. And so I flew straight from Jacksonville, Florida to Las Vegas to catch, like, the last 2 hours. And even just in those 2 hours, I was, like, intoxicated by the atmosphere. I was like, this is so cool. I cannot wait to be a part of this. And then it's funny, we ran Toughest LA. In the middle of the night in Toughest LA, I was like, I'm not doing Worlds. That's stupid because I'm not feeling great. And then I finished Toughest LA, and I was like, okay, let's do this. I'm so excited. So I have some pretty big goals, but I'm working pretty hard to reach them. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how I do out there in the desert.
Yeah. What's your goal for World's Toughest?
So my firm goal is 50 miles, and then my kind of lofty goal is 75. I realize how incredibly lofty that is for a first-time run, but I don't know. I've been working pretty hard, and I'm really putting a lot of effort into my training. So, like I said, it's my lofty goal. My solid goal is 50.
Gotcha. I would also add like a tertiary goal there as move forward for 24 hours.
Yes. Yep. That's one of my sub goals. I just want to keep moving, keep running, and finish. That's like the main goal.
Okay, good. Yeah, because I know a lot of people go in there with certain, mileage goals, and then sometimes the weather doesn't cooperate like it did last year, and people's races fall apart. So I know I always have like tiered goals, and my bottom tier goal is move forward for 24 hours. That way, when everything falls apart, I can still put one foot in front of the other. Because as things fall, as you get tired and cold, and things start falling apart out there, you need something to hold on to.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I'm a person who works well with like those tiered goals, as you say. So for example, I just recently ran my first marathon, and like I only had 2 goals. Like my big goal was to keep under 5 hours, and then or within about 4:10, relatively close. And then my first tier goal was just to keep running, no matter what. Don't stop, just keep running. And I was able to hit that first one, and I was happy. Like, the tiered goals work for me, something just I can realistically achieve.
Nice. As to, people heavily involved in the OCR community and, especially involved in media, let's talk about some of the recent media highlights, specifically like some of the TV shows that have been coming out. So I know Spartan Ultimate Team Challenge premiered a couple weeks ago, season 2. They changed the format a little bit. It's no longer outside. It's more of like kind of looks like a grungy indoor arena. Kind of what are your, Heather or Jay, whoever wants to take it, like what are your thoughts on Ultimate Team Challenge and how it's looking?
So I don't know. I have a hard time saying, I don't like it or I do like it. I think it feels weird putting the Spartan logo on or name, I guess, on something that feels so not like a Spartan race. So I think that throws me off a little bit. But it is really, really fun to watch it and see people that you race next to. I think that's probably my favorite thing about it is seeing me. I'd be like, oh, I know them, or I've met them at a race or whatever it is. So that's really fun for us, I think. But as far as the show and the quality and what they're doing, I think it's just interesting, and I talk a lot about this on our show too, is kind of what's good as far as media goes when it comes to OCR. They've been doing a lot of short courses, trying to draw the media in, or long courses better. For my money, I'll take watching World's Toughest or the Spartan Championship Series any day. Just because I think that I like the dynamic of that race better. But I think within the confines of trying to appeal to a mass audience, not necessarily appealing to OCR racers, but appealing to anybody who's going to watch NBC, I think they do a pretty good job.
As far as season 2 goes as well, I had heard that it was going to be in that urban setting because I heard that it was going to be filmed at the location where Walking Dead was filmed, which I was a little excited about. I was honestly curious how it was going to look because, a big part of OCR is being outdoors in the hills and the mud and all that stuff. And I actually thought they did a pretty good job. Like this most recent episode we watched, they had the rolling mud. They call it something else, but it was rolling mud. So they're incorporating some of the muddier outdoor elements like the mud and the water, which I was happy to see. So, I don't know. I think this. I'm anything that shows OCR, I'm happy. So, I think this season's pretty good so far.
Yeah, I think I got it actually from your. I want to say it was from your podcast. You said, when season 1 was on, you said the show's not for us, like the hardcore OCR people, and that's what I have to tell myself every episode. I kind of enjoy it, and I definitely like seeing like my friends on TV. I think that's probably the coolest part. I don't know, like it doesn't really hold my attention. I still think I still DVR and watch every episode, but I usually end up like playing with my phone halfway through.
Yeah. I mean, we honestly do the same thing too. But I mean, I'm still watching it, but I don't watch it like it's OCR. I watch it like it's a TV show. just like, American Ninja Warrior or any other kind of reality competition show. I sort of have it in my mind as that as opposed to a Spartan race or an OCR.
Yeah, that's probably a better mindset to go into it with. I have trouble, I don't know, I just can't let it go, I have to look at it through like OCR lens, which I know it's not for me. It's trying to bring other people into the sport who, are on the outside and are like, oh, I've never even heard of a Spartan race. Example, I was in the gym the other day and using the atomic climbing holds, I built a rig across my gym has like a set of pull-up bars. And, guys were like, oh, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I do obstacle course racing, and I get the puzzled look. And I'm like, yeah, it's like American Ninja Warrior, except longer, it's like Spartan racing. And they're like, oh, I saw that on TV the other day. And I was like, all right. So, it's raising awareness so that there's this thing called obstacle course racing. So I do think it's good overall.
Yeah, I think it creates that common ground too, like you said, other people can relate to it. And then, I think it's important for Joe's quest to get to the Olympics, even though it's really nothing like what Joe wants in the Olympics. Mm-hmm. But I think it brings that awareness, and if they can have that proof of concept that people want to watch it, then I think he's going to be able to make a stronger argument for OCR in the Olympics.
Yeah, I have to admit though, being the detail-oriented person that I am, when people do that, on TV, like the Spartan show, all of me wants to correct them and go into a long, explanation about what OCR actually is, but I just keep it to myself because, again, it's just raising awareness of the sport in general. So I'm like, yeah, okay, but I'm dying a little on the inside.
Yeah. One of the things that bothers me about the show, it actually bothers me about Ninja Warrior too, is I want to see the talking heads, the commentators, as athletes in that sport. When you watch a football game, there's typically one talking head, and then everyone else is retired football players. And then when you watch Spartan Ultimate Team Challenge or A&W, it's just random semi-celebrities that are talking. I would rather, I know Matt Davis is gonna love this. I'd rather see Matt Davis, on TV as one of the talking heads, and maybe Rose Wetzel or Amelia Boone or Matt Novakovic, people who have done the live stream for Spartan. I'd rather see them kind of in that setting, covering, giving their perspective on how things are going and the challenges people are facing in the middle of the event.
So are we going to make an audition video to pitch for season 3 for you and me hosting this or what? Because I think we got this.
I think that's a good idea. Yeah. Let's do that. Because the people they have on now, so I don't follow that many other sports, right? So Nick Swisher, I don't even know who that is. When they were oh, Nick Swisher's on, I was like, this literally means nothing to me, to give you an idea of how closely I follow other sports. So.
Yeah, I have no idea. Other than Apollo Ono, I had no idea who they were. So I'm definitely in your camp. I'd rather see OCR commentators, OCR people being the commentators.
I know Matt interviewed Apollo Ono, and I want to say on his podcast he said he hasn't run a Spartan race, and I was like, well, how can you comment on something you've never done?
I don't think any of them have.
Yeah, I don't like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then for A&W, I'd rather see Evan Dollard or someone else who's actually done the course before and has trained and kind of lives that lifestyle, throwing their 2 cents in versus a retired football player. So,
those dudes do get pretty out of control, though. I
do enjoy them.
they make me laugh, but I think the guys who do A&W are definitely better than the guys who do American Ninja Warrior than do a Spartan Ultimate Team Challenge. So
hands down. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's any question there. I do like the A&W whatever Team Ninja Warrior. I like that because it's head to head. It's all racing. As an athlete, that speaks to me more than A&W's main season, which I think is. Now, I've commented this on the past. I think it's overly human dramatized. It doesn't really. I know people love that. It's just for me personally, it doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah, and I actually do like that too. Jay doesn't like Team Ninja Warrior as much. I think it's just you're not a fan of the fast course, right?
I don't know what it is I don't like about it. I think the thing I'm not a big fan about that is it is hard, but I don't think they make it as hard as the regular one because they're trying to go fast. So I don't know. There's something about it to me that I really like to watch, like especially the good guys. I like to watch them struggle, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying I want to see them fail, but like I really like seeing like how insane they can make it, you know, like Drew Dreshel, like when it, you know, on his most recent episode, like he made that course look like it was the easiest thing in the world. But I love it when they get on to like Vegas, you know, and it's just like, I know that there's nobody I know that could do that. You know what I mean? And that's really when I start to really appreciate American Ninja Warrior, because I'm like, that is some like inhuman stuff they're doing. Whereas on the short course, or not the short course, but on the Team Ninja Warrior, I feel like, you know, I probably know about 55 people that could probably make this course look pretty easy too.
Yeah, but I like the fast-paced nature of it. I like the race aspect. Anything that has like racing involved, I like it.
I like the Vegas. So I love the Vegas episodes. I'm just not a fan of the city qualifiers because they end up focusing too much on human interest stuff. And I'm a pretty cynical person, so like when I see people on TV and they're like, oh, you know, I have all this personal tragedy, and you know, my family has this problem and this problem, and I'm running a Ninja Warrior. Like, to me, like it's like I have all these personal problems and I'm exploiting them so I can get on TV. That's what I don't like about it. So
I'll definitely concur with that. And then the other thing that drives me crazy, I know this one drives Heather insane, is the people that come up with like the gimmicks. They'll come up with like props to the start line. That just kills me.
And I know it's part of the show because we've talked to people from American Ninja Warrior, and it's just a thing. It's part of the show, but it just drives me nuts. It's like, just go run the course. Like, and it's even more kind of cringeworthy when they make a big deal out of it and a big show, and then they like fall like not even halfway through the course. It's just like, it's just hard to watch.
Yeah, I concur definitely with that. So do you think A&W helps OCR? Like, do you think people are watching that show and like, oh, I want to run a Spartan race or something, or a Tough Mudder after seeing the show?
So, yeah, to some degree, I want to say yes. And why I say that is right now how NBC's doing it is like genius, where they're putting Ultimate Team Challenge immediately following A&W, because A&W's really got the fan base that Spartan doesn't have. So putting it on immediately afterwards, it can kind of draw people's interest. Maybe they DVR it, maybe they stay and watch it, I don't know. But I think that's going to draw a ton of people to seeing, Ultimate Team Challenge, which might draw them into running a Spartan race. Hopefully once they actually get out there and see that it's not 18 minutes long, and they actually have to go through, like, they sign up for a beast for, on accident or something, and they're like, wait.
A lot of them are not team obstacles.
Wait, 12 miles and you can't help me? Oh, this is going to be bad. Yeah. But, no, I do think it does. But I think the interesting thing is I think it goes the other way, though. Every time I talk to somebody, or I feel like my family says this to me all the time too. They're like, "Oh, when are you going to try out for American Ninja Warrior?" I'm like, "I'm not.
Yeah,
there's not enough running for me. It's too short."
Well, it's hard.
and I'm not strong enough.
But because it's interesting. I think up until Spartan Ultimate Team Challenge aired, I don't think it did a whole lot, just because American Ninja Warrior is so different. I think in one sense it did promote fitness a lot and sort of like playing with obstacles, which is awesome. But I feel like the two are very, very different. Like, our first race was the Tough Mudder, and we ran that because I had heard about Tough Mudder from an outside source, but we had been watching American Ninja Warrior for at least 2 years into that point. And so we never really connected the dots. And but it, like Jay said, once they started putting Spartan around or promoting it around, American Ninja Warrior time, then you sort of start to see the correlation there. It's sort of like a gateway to this other TV show that's the door to OCR, essentially. That's how I view it.
So slippery slope. So you start an A&W, fall into the Ultimate Team Challenge, and next thing you know, you're standing on the start line of a Spartan Beast.
Yeah.
Of a Spartan Beast you think is going to take an hour and a half, but turns out it's 6 hours.
Yeah.
Yes, and then hopefully you don't decide you hate it.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, I get that. I know how you feel. I get that same. So my two most common questions are, when are you trying out for an American Ninja Warrior? And
Still with us?
And then, when are you running Barclays? Those are the two questions I get. I probably get them at least once a month, probably once every 2 weeks. And my response is always all right, so A&W, the reason I'm good is because I can run for a long time and do obstacles. They're taking away half of my advantage. There's no running, right? So, that's bad. And then Barclays is the opposite. It takes away my other advantage. I'm not the best ultra runner, but most people who can run as long as I can't do obstacles. So it takes away the obstacles and just turns into, it's actually running, and it's actually not even a marathon. It's, it's not even an ultra marathon. It's technically an adventure race because you're navigating between points. You're not actually following a fixed course. So, but that's another
that's
story.
Definitely. Yeah, I was gonna say that's definitely one of the coolest races in my opinion. That is an insane race.
But I mean that is what I love about OCR. I love that it's that blend, and that's why American Ninja Warrior is so different, because it doesn't have that blend, and that's why Barkley marathons are so different, because it doesn't have that blend. OCR is this wonderful blend of a running race and an obstacle race. I love it because the running is enough to challenge me, but not to be too boring, because I'm one of those people that I had a really hard time getting running to not be boring for myself. But then it's not back-to-back obstacles, so I could actually improve instead of just be constantly defeated.
Yeah, I know. I've gone back, and I still do some running, straight up running races. Not very often anymore because it takes away from my OCR. But I went back and did a 50K earlier this year, and I was so bored. I was like, oh my god, I'm never doing an straight ultra running again. I was like, oh, I wish there was some obstacles here, and oh, this guy's ahead of me. Of course he is. He's got no muscle, right? He can obviously run much faster than me. So I love ultra OCR. No longer a big fan of just straight ultra running. So
that's fair. I think I'm going the other way.
Yeah.
I love just pure running. So, I think as I get back from this deployment, I'm actually going to spend a lot of time doing some kind of pure ultras and stuff like that.
Jay's that rare breed that doesn't get bored while running, and I can't understand it, and I never will.
So I never got bored while running until I found OCR, and then I'm like, oh, this is so much more exciting. And now when I go back, I'm like, oh, this was boring. Yes. Straight ultras are, in fact, boring.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I've never run an ultra, but I'm the same way.
Marathons, I think are still interesting because I'm still very concerned about pace and watching splits and food intake and stuff like that. And it's over in a couple hours. It's not an 5+ hour event for most people. So I think that kind of wraps up most of the major topics we wanted to talk about. Got to talk about overcome and run, podcasting, and training on deployments, as well as some of the recent media highlights in the OCR world. Jay, you have any shout-outs you want to give before we say goodbye to everyone?
Oh man, shout-outs. I don't know. I don't know people. I don't know anybody.
Just be sure to look us up on Facebook, Instagram. We usually release episodes about once a week. Yeah,
especially the Facebook and the Instagram. We've been trying to grow that a little bit. I don't know. I don't social media, so Heather does all that, and she's way cooler than me. So you should definitely follow it because she's awesome. But yeah, just hit us up, overcomeandrun.com, and to hit up the episode. And then I definitely want to say for sure, if you haven't already bought Evan's book, you need to do that because Heather actually read it and has got put
so
things
good.
into practice immediately.
Yes. Oh my God. Not just because I'm on your show, it's legitimately such an incredible resource, and I'm absolutely loving it. So everyone should read your book.
I appreciate that. So what's funny is after I wrote it, while editing it, I've read it so many times. It's it's too much. And now that it's like actually published and on shelves, I actually don't, like I haven't actually read it because I don't want to find something I don't like. You know, like, it would be something minor. It would be like a tiny tweak or, you know, I do know there's a spelling error in there. And I know one of the charts has a couple of errors on it, but yeah, I'm scared to read it because I'm worried I'm going to find something and be like, oh, I can't believe I said that. But,
oh, yeah.
I know most of it's good because, like I said, I proofread it probably 30 times, so.
No, I mean, we only highlighted like at least a good 30 or 40 pages of head errors. No big deal, but I mean, those are, that's only like 10% of the book, so it's cool.
So, yeah, thanks again for coming on the podcast. I did find out when I went to go tag you on Instagram about an hour ago and realized that I was not following you, so I fixed that immediately. So that's good to know. But thanks again for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
And it was nice to be on the opposite side of the spectrum and interviewing you for once. And again, thanks for everything you did kind of at the beginning, and glad I got to be on your podcast a couple times, and we'll have to do this again in the future. Maybe we'll have Brenna back here next time.
Yeah, definitely, man.
Awesome.
You know you're always welcome on Overcome and Run. So
yeah, thanks for
anytime you want to come by and anything you have to share, you're always welcome, my friend.
Sounds great. We'll catch you next week. That's it from Strength and Speed.